it's really got a lot of heart and a lot of positivity, and in how we treat each other in this world. And even though it might be the end of the world, everyone needs to be really good to each other. Like, it's all we've got, and everyone needs to care about each other and really value these relationships.
Hey, it's Kristen, and I'm so excited to share my conversation with Love and Monsters director Michael Matthews. He gave so much insight into this film, including the incredible cast, how the creatures were designed, and what really happened to Boy's owner. If you haven't checked out my review of the film, it's right over here. Enjoy our conversation. I loved Love and Monsters. It was so much fun. Could you tell us a little bit about the film and what inspired you to bring it to life?
When I first read it, I just loved it. It just sparked back so much of the things growing up that I loved. Joel and Boy aspect of it, just a guy and a dog on this adventure. Not that that's the whole movie, but there's something like really earnest and heartfelt about it that just, for me, just fitted. And the genre elements of it and the creature world building and all of that, like it was just straight up in my zone of like the kind of thing I'd love to make. And that even when I was doing it and reading it and thinking about it, I was always thinking, of myself as like a 13 or 15-year-old kid, and how how would I make this so this would be my like favorite movie.
Dylan O'Brien is such a charismatic actor. What was it like finding the right actor to play Joel?
He was on when I joined, and he was the perfect casting. He himself, I don't think they had gone out searching. He saw the script and was like, I would love to do this. This is like perfect for me, And I didn't know him that well, except for the Maze Runner roles specifically. And so I read the script and then met with him and was chatting about it. And I was like, is he going to be, in Maze Runner, he's really the strong hero, and he does it perfectly, but he's like passionate, charismatic in a different way, but straight, that character Thomas, it's there's no kind of humor or charm or like innocent. There's innocence, but there's not a insecurity, so I just, for me, right at the beginning, I was like, it's so key for Joel to not be a hero at the start of the movie. If people feel like this guy's kind of trying to be cool, or he's got what it takes and that, but the first chats I had with Dylan was the total opposite, where we were sort of going too far with it, going, what if this guy's like has hardly grown up since he was like 12, he's so immature, and he draws kid drawings, and he's scared to show people things, and he's got toys in his bed, and it's like just turn him into like a real joke. And obviously we didn't go that far, but it was really just I think he's extremely open and wanted to be kind of vulnerable in a way, and silly, and like let go a bit, and he has such good instincts and feelings for what is funny and what works. But then when there is stress or action or an intensity emotionally to something, he's like right there. So I was just extremely impressed like through the process with him, and we got along really well and had so many laughs. And I'd say he's a good friend now. We really had a good experience together through the whole thing.
That's awesome. What about putting the rest of the cast together?
Michael Rooker, was sort of right on the top of the list, and we were just lucky he was keen to do it. We wanted someone who could come in and be this person that we just believe as a survivor. We're not going to question on whether or not he knows what the right things to eat are or how to evade creatures and things, because he just embodies the type of person that like has that, in him, and has been through those sort of things in life. So he really just fit the role, and he was keen to do it. And then Jessica was, we did actual castings with Dylan to just get chemistry and feel out how they felt together. And they just had a great vibe and could improvise things and be funny together in a way that didn't feel too cheesy. There was an honesty there that wasn't trying to be too cute and too soft. And she wasn't trying to portray something as opposed to just be a normal person. And so the two of them together could really bounce off each other and had this great energy, and felt like they fit together. Like you could see them hanging out. And I think you see that in the car scene when they're in the beginning of the scene in the car. There's just like a real nice charm to the way they chat and the jokes that they have at each other. But then they feel like the intimacy is real as well. But then she had to have the end part of the film, the version of her that's grown up, and that is sort of unexpectedly just a bit more serious and more mature than the person we knew. And especially when we have Joel get there, he's like he's still a kid, and you sort of almost see that clearer when they meet together. You suddenly like, well, he's like actually hasn't really grown up, and she has, and then that's quite a big learning curve there. And there's nothing gimmicky to who she's become, and so she really brought that. She could do those two things really well. And sort of just fill the character in ways that brought it to life. And then the action stuff as well. We knew, you know, from the early drafts of the script and everything, there was always going to be Amy kind of really fending for herself at the end there and doing what she could physically. And Jessica's just like, you know, super capable with all that. So it just meant with stunts and things, she could do so much of it. And we could have her there, seeing her face rolling in the sand, dodging punches, and it wasn't like you're not trying to trick it with a stunt double the whole time. So again, just like I was just so fortunate to that she was keen and that she worked well with Dylan. And then Ariana, you know, that was she just sort of blew everyone away to a degree with her confidence, even though she's so young, and her ability to like take shit from Dylan or whoever it was and like push back and be like precocious, like not a huge fan of the word, but you know, she has that confidence and that bossiness that kind of comes natural, not natural to her as a person, but as for acting in the role, it came really natural for her. And then still being able to feel like there's a child behind that, and there's a bit of an innocence there, and there's a vulnerability that, you know, she's just got this kind of guard up of trying to be like, have this protection and like nothing's important, and you know, I've got all this, you know, and she obviously doesn't. She's a child, and in the casting, you know, she went from that kind of confidence and flair and sort of pushing Joel around a bit to then the scene of them leaving, you know, and instantly just sort of got vulnerable and needy and a bit like, I don't understand why you're leaving. And she was just tearing up just talking about it, but didn't want to look at him. And it was like, oh, wow, she's just an extremely capable actor at such a young age, you know. So, yeah, I was just lucky that I got to work with such a great group.
Clyde and Minnow had some of my favorite lines. I love when she's trying to teach Joel how to fight against monsters, and she's like, he's going to eat you like broccoli.
That's totally improv, you know, and that's her. I was shooting little lines and things like that, but that scene was actually a little bit simpler, where it was really her just going, come on, Joel, needle through water. But by then, fortunately, this is the kind of stuff that takes a bit of experience, and like I feel like I'm getting better at as I grow up a bit more in the directing field. But you sort of identify while you're going the quality of of what someone's bringing to something, and the fact that they did have this good energy, and that she was like a lot of child actors, you know, they have to learn their lines really hard with their parents usually, and then they come to set and that's what they need to do, and they've really thought about it all. And if you suddenly change that line, or you go, maybe not that, just skip that line and then just jump straight to the next one, whatever it might be, it can really throw them, because I know I can't do that, you know, like I'm terrible even trying to act or be in front of camera if I've got specific things I have to do. And so kids, it's like a lot of it's so heavily sort of trained, and then it's hard to change, which is just not the case for her. She could just wing it with Dylan, do whatever, you know, he could say anything. So when we were shooting that, I was just getting excited about going, you know, what if you're just like edging him on, and you like make sounds like you're the creature, you're the monster, you know, you're the tree that's like gross. And then she just said, I'm gonna eat you like broccoli, you know, that wasn't even a line. And it's just so funny because it's so honest from like a child that age. And then I was like, just tell him how you're gonna like kill his girlfriend, and then she just like went off on that, you know. And it just feels, it's really fun. So she was lovely.
I just remember cracking up when that scene came up. And I also wanted to get into, you know, one of the things that you mentioned that I really loved about this story was that, you know, it starts off as this guy kind of braving the monster apocalypse for love, and ends up really turning into more of like a coming of age story. I really loved like the self-awareness of realizing that like Amy doesn't need saving. And
totally.
They have some really great moments where they're like equals fighting the monsters together. So, you know, why did you guys decide to go that route?
In a way, it's just a given, you know, like it just felt like that was the arc, and that's what it needed to be. It's about Joel growing up, and the audience really enjoying that he's a romantic idealist, and that he's kind of naive, and he's just passionate about this quest. But he's actually a child in that way, you know. He hasn't been through real relationships or had broken up with someone he loved, and he's basically a 16-year-old, you know, a 24-year-old, but with like the social and development skills of someone who's 16. It just hasn't been through much stuff. So it was really important that when he gets there, you start feeling that you like, oh, I was kind of in this cool adventure movie where I had to get to this girl, and like I care so much about her and stuff, but I don't actually know her that well. I haven't. When you suddenly realize she's like, you had this other person in her life that she lost, and think, you suddenly think, wow, Joel, did you not? You have obviously not had any real chats with her. It suddenly just, you realize it's a bit thin and immature, like his view on everything. And so all of that, from really what the story's about, is what made it feel like Amy needs to be who she is. And you know, I really, there's a funny, a difficult one there with women in film, with like not wanting to be gimmickly actiony or strong. You know, there's something about that I feel like is also just an easy go-to of just someone being badass and something. And I just feel like that's not true strength. Like her being someone that's actually responsible and kind of knows what's going on and is physically capable and kind of strong as a person, but is actually kind of grown up and dealing with stuff. That's that's more of like a stronger character to me than if she had been really cool when we met her or something, you know, and like kind of more badass, and we're like, whoa, she's become this like kick-ass monster killer. You know, that's just a bit, those things, I think people go there kind of quickly with that stuff, and I'm a little bit wary of that being kind of, especially when you look back on movies a few years from now, a lot of those tropes of those people feeling like we're trying to lift women up of making them feel strong, but it actually being kind of a bit of a gimmick in itself. So it's just important just to make her kind of well-rounded and strong in a real way, you know. And then in the fight, we just never wanted, you know, for me, I just never wanted Joel to become the hero of the movie. He sort of is, but he never really is. There's never an ego there and a macho-ness. And we had many conversations in the making of it, and it often came up from many different people and during the edit and all sorts about masculinity. And him being too emasculated, or, you know, those sort of things, are really tricky stuff to balance out. But, you know, we've, like, every other movie has like a real, like a man who's like meant to be who he's meant to be or whatever, and is like this built-in hero inherently in there or something, you know, which Joel never really is. He sort of has it, but there's got to be a goofiness to the end, and never, you know, he has found his place at the end, but I still think he's the kind of person that still doesn't think things center around him. He's just trying to find his way in the world in like his value, you know. So in that way, like I almost see Amy as being like in that fight sequence and stuff, she's sort of more capable. He sort of gets a little bit lucky and kind of goofy. He's been through a lot, so it feels like he's learned some things, but she is actually stronger than him for sure, you know. And it felt like the right balance. Didn't want to over push her too far. They didn't want Joel to suddenly become this guy who's like awesome at everything, and at the end is like overly confident and cool, you know.
I think it really came across, you know, I felt like watching the film, Joel was someone that was kind of like this everyman. Like I thought like, wow, this guy who's like, you know, kind of afraid of everything, somehow managed to make it through this monster apocalypse. Like we all can make it through.
And it never becomes about him where he thinks, I'm actually pretty great that I did this, you know? And even if people don't say it, it's a lot in movies, people sort of earn these places of being a bit of like a chosen one. And like, I've got what it takes. And everyone sees that person as being this great, you know, and there's just something that's not that societally great about that projection, you know? Like we all have our place. And to be honest, like I kept trying to move it back to, although he feels guilty and an insecurity about being the guy who fixes the radio and makes a minestrone, there's also like nothing really wrong with being that guy. Like he didn't realize what he had at the colony. He had a family. He just felt insecure and that he wasn't good enough. And that's got nothing to do with becoming manly or the hero. It's just about getting comfortable with like who you are.
Yeah, that's a great message. And I also really loved the message behind Amy of this person who, you know, doesn't have to be like a super powered woman who like has no flaws. She can be responsible and vulnerable and has dealt with things in life that feels very, you know, real in this world that is, you know, kind of
totally.
A bit outside of our own.
It's tricky at the end, you know, the idea of whether to feel like they should sort of be finding a little bit of love at the end or not. And again, those things make to gimmicks. Like I wouldn't want her to now suddenly like Joel because he's the hero. You know, there's something too simplistic about that. So we try to just write a fine line of it. Feels like it's a bit more like her just also coming out of a bit of a phase and opening up the sense of hope of other things and stuff, you know, rather than Joel's now this guy who's awesome, you know, and them sort of kissing there at the end and stuff is a little bit more like just they've both kind of earned it, and like the world's hard and they're sort of meeting a little bit more equally than when Joel first arrived there. But it's not like, hopefully it's not cheesy.
The monsters here were so much fun because they're, you know, sort of these monstrous versions of creatures that we all know, snails, crabs, and those beautiful flying jellies. I love that scene. Could you talk a little bit about the designing process?
The ideas in general of what the creatures were for the most part were in the script, to like the frog in the pool and those sort of things. But I guess for me, there was like a lot of different ways in it that could go. And there's so many different creature films out there and different directions. It's really hard to do something that felt different. And what I kind of latched to was just working off it being kind of as real as it could be. In terms of the feel of them, the tactile, the tangible textures and things and so I just put mood boards and ideas together of like frogs that I like the textures of, or frogs' eyes, or feet, or boils, like weird things I would find that felt like just real as a starting point rather than to just go off to come up with something. And so that's really for me where a lot of it originated, was making banks of ideas of thinking, oh, the centipede has like a really interesting look. If that was big, it would be quite interesting, you know, and scary because there's something real to it, and it's not just a monster. It feels like something like a relatable idea. And then, you know, there's just so many other processes after that of the concept artists coming in and doing really cool work and us finding the groove there. I think in general, what I kept trying to bring back was to not make them too much like the idea of a monster, like not leaning into them just being scary kind of creatures or something, and to try and keep going back to like a bug. Like if this bug thing was big, obviously it's mutated and it's scary, and we've gone sharper with this and grosser, slimy teeth and whatever, but there's still like it's still like a sense like that's a frog, you know, and you go too far away from that and it starts feeling a little bit artificial, and somehow that's where I feel like a lot of films do that. Like it's not fair to just put a blankety judgment, but there's a lot of creatures out there that just, I don't know, and somehow the way they move and all of that, there's a CG thing that's developed of how and what people, I guess people audience wants, and also what filmmakers sort of think a creature should be doing and how it should move and that way. And I was really just consistently trying to keep it quite simple and focus on the dirt that it's in and the leaves it's moving and the look of the textures on them, and making sure that it didn't move in a way that was animated too much, that felt like a CG creature, you know, felt like a bit more real and a little bit clumsy. And there's like a bit of snot stuff running out the frog's nose and things that you don't see it really unless you pause and you sit and look at stuff. But it's an accumulation of ideas that sort of just put it in its space and make it a little bit more real, even though it's like a crazy creature.
And I also thought it was really cool, that idea of, you know, being able to look at these monsters and not all of them are bad.
I prefer when things aren't black and white like that. You know, it's a new world, and there's a whole, why would they all be killing machines? You know, there's all sorts of weird slugs that'll be out there just doing their things that have just gotten bigger, whatever it might be. And it just makes the world feel a bit more three-dimensional than just the monsters are there to kill you, which is how you want the movie to set up. You know, it's a bit of like a fear thing with the way we are in the world, where we have quite simplistic views of the world. And we go, those are monsters out there. That's the scenario. That's what it is. And it's like a fear-driven thing. But almost in all those situations in life, or whatever it might be going in the world or whatever, there's a lot of gray area in that stuff. And usually putting yourself out there and opening yourself up to being someone to look and think about stuff and take things in from your own perspective, rather than just being told that's scary, that's that, don't go close, don't go there. You know, we live in a world very much like that right now, to be honest, and people aren't doing their own thinking about a lot of things. But so there's a bit of that in a way where it was important to me. Like the boulder snail actually wasn't when I joined the project, like that scene wasn't there. which is kind of the only creature where we have that moment, except for the crab eyes and stuff like that at the end. But I just felt like I just want to make sure the world feels like a little bit better than it's just we're waiting for the next monster. So now you're a bit more questioning about how you feel about all of it, and that the world could be maybe kind of interesting if you learn how to live in it.
Those are great details, and I think they really make the world feel full. This film has it all: laughs, scares, monsters, heart, and even a little bit of that mystery. So what do you want people to take away from this project?
Just thinking about how we in our own little bubbles and our bunkers, and are very fearful of lots of stuff. But experiencing things and learning stuff for yourself is like really important, and putting yourself out there. But that also right now, those things, it sounds like a political message, because there's such a clear divide right now of going, don't go outside your bunker, look after your health. But none of that existed before us finishing the movie. Literally I finished it, and then the lockdown stuff and things started in March. We were finished before then. So there was zero even recognition that there would ever be a conversation about that. And so for me, it was the message that I'm saying made sense, and now it's confusing because it's such this strong political stuff going on. But it still is true, just if you take away the simple surface layer of going, don't go out into the world, or being safe with a mask, or like we should be being held, forgetting that, like the idea that we very much are in our own bubbles, and we're in a very much echo chambery spaces of spending a lot of time like online in social media, in these like echo chambers, as opposed to sort of experience and living things and learning stuff for ourselves, and like finding our place in the world. You just don't, like, other things shouldn't really control your own voyeuristic potential of going and learning and figuring something new people didn't know. Joel is just the right sort of character to be someone who wants to draw creatures, think about them. He never thought he would be someone to figure out that they're not all good and bad, and not kill this crab at the end and make that decision or whatever, which is all quite simple stuff. But he ultimately is that person because he's not his focus. He's got an interest in it. He's spending the time drawing them, thinking them, making notes. And so that's how he became the person. It's because he was interested and he cared about thinking about these things, versus just going, where's my gun and my thing to like kill? I'm going to become the ultimate killer. What I would say for audiences to take, I hope, is just a positivity. I feel there's like a wholesomeness to what the film is about, and it's not too deep, and there's no strong messaging in the film and that sort of thing. It's really got a lot of heart and a lot of positivity, and in how we treat each other in this world. And even though it might be the end of the world, everyone needs to be really good to each other. Like, it's all we've got, and everyone needs to care about each other and really value these relationships. And hopefully there's a nice feeling of hope at the end of the film.
Looking at the story, I feel like it's not over yet. They're off to the mountains. Yeah. We never found out about Boy's owner. So do you see a sequel in the future?
A sequel? I don't know. I think there's definitely some cool ideas, but we never went into it with that focus, and it was really important to Dylan and myself to just not feel like we're starting like something that's already, we know where it goes, and it makes it feel a bit too much like a product and like a franchise thing, which sort of takes integrity away from just like trying to make a cool movie. That's its own thing. And then depending how people respond to that and how it's received, and also I think what people take from it and what like really worked about it, I think then you kind of think, is it like, what's the reason to do another one? And I think there's lots of really interesting ideas with the world, because we've actually seen very little of everything that could be out there, and how things have changed, and other kind of creature habitats and all sorts of interesting things. But I think it's really down to how people receive the project, and if the ideas warrant going into another space like that before it's just for a cash grab,
Definitely. Now I gotta know, is there any secret hints in this film about what happened to Boy's owner?
No, there's not. And that's what's so interesting, is like it was really just someone who obviously died. That is the truth of what was in it. But now, I think the film, people have loved Boy more than I think people could have imagined on the page. And so that relationship, it really just signified him letting go of his old owner originally, that dress. It's just him kind of letting that go to go, okay, it's me and Dylan. Dylan's my new partner, But because we care about their relationship so much, and Boy is so awesome in the movie, it adds a whole extra emphasis to people wanting more out of. We want to know more about Boy and his past, and I think that's all really good stuff. But the truth is that it wasn't something behind that. It was really a dog that had someone that went out and never came back, and he's been living for a few months or whatever it might be by himself, trying to survive. But I do understand how people want the answer, but we'll see. We'll probably have to come up with one if we do a sequel, if it feels so important to everyone.
Love and Monsters is out on VOD right now. If you guys like this one, you can check out more of my interviews right here. See ya.